The takeout order should have taken 20 minutes, maybe 30 on a busy Friday night before Christmas. Kyle Seidel kissed his wife Kate goodbye, promised their 3 young children he'd return with Chinese food from their favorite restaurant, and stepped into the bitter December cold of 2012. He never made it to the Lucky Inn. Instead, the 34-year-old dock builder was found bleeding in a bowling alley parking lot, fatally shot by an unknown assailant, whose motive remains as elusive as their identity more than a decade later. Kyle had arrived home to his Waterford, Connecticut residence around 7:30 that Friday evening, slightly delayed after attending his company holiday party and sharing drinks with a friend at a local dive bar. Despite having consumed alcohol throughout the afternoon, he immediately shifted into family mode, greeting Kate and their children before volunteering to pick up dinner. The Essex Island marina laborer had just received his holiday bonus of approximately $600, plus additional cash distributed by his supervisors during the festivities. While Kyle typically handed his paychecks directly to Kate for household expenses, he retained $40 that night to cover the takeout order from the Lucky Inn, a restaurant located just 10 minutes from their home. As minutes stretched into an hour, Kate's initial assumption that the restaurant might be unusually busy gave way to mounting anxiety. Her concern crystallized into dread when her sister texted with news spreading rapidly through their small community. Someone had been shot at the local bowling alley. Though Kyle rarely frequented the bowling alley or its adjacent bar, Kate realized he would have driven past the location en route to the restaurant. Nausea overwhelmed her as she began frantically calling Kyle's phone, each unanswered ring amplifying her fear. The emergency calls began flooding Waterford's 911 dispatch center around 8:20 p.m., with multiple witnesses reporting a man lying in the bowling alley parking lot. The third caller, identifying himself as a corrections officer, provided chilling details. The victim appeared to have a bullet wound to his chest. His car was still running with the door open, and he had moved his head briefly before falling still. The caller speculated that the man might have been involved in an altercation before being shot. When first responders arrived minutes later, they found the victim barely conscious. Despite attempts to elicit information about his attacker, the man's jaw merely quivered as if trying to speak, but no words emerged. Investigators quickly identified him through his wallet and vehicle registration as Kyle Seidel, though Kate remained unaware of her husband's fate while waiting anxiously at home. As paramedics rushed Kyle to the hospital, investigators began processing the crime scene, starting with his vehicle. The car's position immediately struck them as unusual. Parked at an awkward angle across parking spaces with the engine running, headlights on, and driver's door wide open. The scene suggested Kyle had either arrived hastily or needed to exit his vehicle quickly. Inside the car, investigators found the $40 Kyle had intended to spend on dinner, untouched and waiting. Outside the vehicle, investigators discovered Kyle's small pocket knife lying open on the ground near the car, a tool they learned he carried regularly. The knife's position, combined with the vehicle's configuration, led police to conclude that Kyle had been outside his car when shot and had at least attempted to defend himself. However, DNA testing revealed only Kyle's genetic material on the knife, indicating he never came close enough to his attacker to use the weapon effectively. The lack of physical evidence proved frustrating for investigators. Despite thorough searching, they found no shell casings, though several explanations seemed plausible. The fierce wind that night, dropping temperatures into the low 30s, could have blown lightweight casings away. Alternatively, the shooter might have collected the evidence before fleeing, or used a revolver that doesn't expel casings. Detective Ray Carroll later reflected on the case's primary challenge: the absence of evidence indicating anyone else had been present at the scene beyond Kyle himself. Investigators interviewed more than a dozen witnesses at the bowling alley, spoke with local business owners, and recorded the license plates of every vehicle in the parking lot. Despite these efforts, no useful information emerged. No one reported seeing Kyle arrive or hearing any confrontation. No witnesses observed vehicles fleeing the scene, and investigators couldn't even confirm whether the perpetrator had used a vehicle or approached on foot. Any hope that Kyle might identify his assailant vanished when he succumbed to his injuries at 8:45 p.m. Around the same time, Kate was at home attempting to manage her anxiety while caring for their children. She had just put their son Jesse to sleep when she noticed headlights in her driveway. The approaching vehicle belonged to her sister Christy, and Kate's stomach dropped as she realized this wasn't a social visit. Though police hadn't yet notified the family, news travels swiftly in small communities. Christy had learned about the shooting from a friend working at the local emergency room. While Christy remained with the children, Kate rushed to the hospital with Christy's husband and their friend, only to discover that Kyle had already died. Kate found herself confronting an overwhelming question that would haunt both her and investigators. Why had Kyle been in that parking lot? Police posed the same question to Kate, but she had no answers. She described Kyle's holiday party, his plan to collect Chinese food, and confirmed that he had been drinking earlier in the day. Kyle's brother Jeremy corroborated that Kyle had sounded intoxicated during a phone conversation approximately 1 hour before the shooting. However, no one could explain why Kyle would have stopped at the bowling alley. Investigators began exploring whether drug activity might have motivated the detour. Kate acknowledged that Kyle occasionally smoked marijuana and had used cocaine in his younger years, estimating he smoked marijuana twice weekly and purchased it from a local dealer whose name she didn't know. However, she emphasized that Kyle had marijuana at home and wouldn't have needed to buy more. Kyle's mother, Darlene, supported this assessment, noting that Kyle had spent the entire afternoon after his holiday party visiting friends, providing ample opportunity to conduct any personal business. She couldn't imagine why he would make a detour while picking up takeout, especially since it would result in cold food requiring reheating. As Kyle's family struggled to understand how he ended up in that parking lot, they developed several theories. The first possibility, suggested by a family member's intuition, involved road rage. Perhaps Kyle had cut off another driver, or someone had cut him off, leading to a confrontation. The unusual parking position of Kyle's vehicle seemed to support this theory, and detectives took it seriously. Investigators immediately began searching for security footage that might have captured the shooting or preceding events, but their efforts proved largely unsuccessful. Most local businesses had non-functional cameras or surveillance pointing in wrong directions. One nearby ATM featured a motion-activated camera that showed Kyle's car in the parking lot, but whenever vehicles approached the ATM, they blocked the view of the broader scene, rendering the footage useless for investigative purposes. A brief moment of hope emerged when detectives reviewing gas station surveillance spotted a vehicle registered to someone with a violent criminal history driving past the bowling alley that night. However, this individual provided a solid alibi for the time of Kyle's murder and was quickly eliminated as a suspect. While the road rage theory gained traction among family members, Darlene rejected it based on her knowledge of Kyle's temperament. She explained that Kyle actually feared aggressive drivers due to his experience operating trucks as a teenager. He had frequently expressed concern about angry motorists who would cut dangerously close to his large vehicle, expecting him to stop instantly. Darlene believed Kyle would have avoided confrontation by pulling off the road, perhaps into a parking lot, rather than escalating a situation. Instead, Darlene proposed that Kyle might have stopped to help someone in distress. She described her son as someone who would assist stranded motorists or intervene if he witnessed domestic violence, particularly involving vulnerable individuals during the holiday season. She envisioned scenarios where Kyle might have seen someone he knew in trouble and pulled into the parking lot to investigate or offer assistance. Detectives considered this possibility but ultimately dismissed it due to poor visibility in the dimly lit parking lot. The bowling alley sat far back from Route 1, with bright business lights drowning out background illumination and making it nearly impossible to spot anyone in distress from the roadway. If road rage and Good Samaritan theory seemed unlikely, investigators wondered whether Kyle's stop had been pre-planned. Given his recent holiday bonus, they theorized he might have intended to purchase harder drugs than marijuana to celebrate. However, examination of Kyle's phone revealed no messages suggesting planned meetings or drug purchases. Subsequent toxicology testing confirmed that Kyle had no illegal drugs or prescription painkillers in his system at the time of death, only alcohol. His blood alcohol content measured 0.18%. More than double Connecticut's legal limit. One text message on Kyle's phone did capture investigators' attention, however. The day before his murder, Kyle had messaged a friend expressing interest in purchasing a .45 caliber pistol. This detail gained significance when the medical examiner recovered a .45 caliber bullet from Kyle's body, raising the possibility that he had arranged to meet someone for an illegal gun purchase that turned violent. Detectives interviewed the friend who received Kyle's text message about the gun, but Kyle hadn't provided additional details about potential sellers or meeting locations. The friend assumed Kyle would purchase the weapon legally from a store, particularly since Kyle claimed to have a pistol permit. However, investigators discovered that Kyle didn't actually possess a pistol permit, suggesting any gun purchase would have been conducted illegally. Extensive analysis of Kyle's phone records, including calls, texts, and social media messages, revealed no communications regarding gun purchases or meetings with unknown individuals. Investigators also examined phone records belonging to Kate, Jeremy, and Kyle's close friends, searching for evidence that someone else might have arranged a meeting on Kyle's behalf, but found nothing suspicious. Kyle's mother provided crucial context for his interest in firearms. She explained that Kyle and his father had been working together to obtain proper pistol permits for shark fishing expeditions off Montauk. They had attended permit classes, gathered necessary documentation, and planned to submit their applications after Christmas when holiday activities concluded. Darlene emphasized that Kyle was fundamentally law-abiding and wouldn't risk illegal gun purchases, especially for something he didn't urgently need. Kyle's passion for fishing was well established within the family. Darlene and her husband had recently purchased a boat for Kyle, who was making payments with plans to own it outright within 4 years using his tax refunds. Kyle had visited a local gun shop approximately 1 week before his murder and called his mother afterward, seeking advice about which pistol to purchase. He specifically mentioned that he couldn't obtain the weapon until his permit application was approved, which they expected to happen shortly after the holidays. Detective Carroll confirmed that Waterford police never received a pistol permit application from Kyle, though this didn't preclude him from gathering necessary paperwork for submission. Kyle's brother Jeremy stated that Kyle hadn't mentioned any plans to meet someone for a gun purchase and doubted Kyle would spend money on such an item right before Christmas, despite his recent bonus. Jeremy noted that Kyle had already purchased numerous Christmas presents that year, and the brothers were planning to shop for their wives the following day. Kyle's financial situation also contradicted theories about expensive purchases. Beyond the $40 for takeout, investigators found only $23 in Kyle's wallet. Kate confirmed that Kyle rarely carried significant cash, and even if he had received a cash bonus that day, Darlene estimated it would have been approximately $50 based on her family's experience with marina work. Frustrated by the lack of progress from Kyle's phone records, investigators attempted to obtain a search warrant for a cell tower dump that would provide data from all phones in the area that night. However, the court denied this request, forcing detectives to pursue traditional investigative methods by interviewing anyone who knew Kyle or might understand why he was in that parking lot. This approach yielded one additional piece of information from Kyle's friend Travis, who revealed that Kyle had stopped by his residence after leaving the bar, but before going home. Kyle had attempted to convince Travis to accompany him somewhere, but Travis declined. While intriguing, this information didn't provide a new lead since Kyle hadn't specified a destination, and he clearly decided to return home to his family afterward. Detectives verified Travis's alibi for the night and found it solid. The investigation faced additional complications due to timing. Kyle's murder occurred just 1 week after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, which had claimed the lives of 20 children and 6 educators approximately 90 minutes away. This massive tragedy demanded extensive state law enforcement resources and national attention, potentially impacting the resources available for Kyle's case. His family continues to worry that these factors influenced the investigation's trajectory, particularly since the case was eventually transferred to the state police cold case unit. Despite reward offers and publicity through posters distributed around town, the case remained cold until 2014, when investigators included Kyle's information on playing cards distributed to Connecticut prisons. This initiative generated the first significant leads in years. An incarcerated individual, referred to by the pseudonym Mike to protect the ongoing investigation, reportedly claimed responsibility for Kyle's murder while playing cards with fellow inmates. When another prisoner, identified as Ron, disputed Mike's claim and asserted that he had committed the crime instead, investigators began examining both men. They discovered that Mike and Ron were associates outside prison, with Ron apparently serving as Mike's enforcer. Both suspects had extensive criminal histories. Mike's record centered primarily on narcotics offenses, while Ron had a more violent background, including shootings in addition to drug-related crimes. The credibility of their prison confessions received apparent support when a family member of Mike's contacted police, reporting that Mike had admitted to the murder and had appeared nervous and eager to leave town on the night of the shooting. This family member had acquired Mike's former cell phone, which contained photographs of Mike posing with various firearms. However, when investigators attempted to verify the confession account, they discovered inconsistencies. The supposed witnesses to Mike's admission could not have been present based on parole and probation records, undermining the informant's credibility. Despite these credibility issues, investigators believe there might be truth underlying the claims. When Mike was released from prison in 2014 or 2015, law enforcement developed a strategy to build a narcotics case against him, hoping that his incarceration might encourage other witnesses to come forward without fear of retaliation. Mike was arrested on drug charges in late 2015, providing investigators an opportunity to interview him. However, he denied any involvement in Kyle's murder, claimed never to have been at the bowling alley, and insisted he didn't know Kyle. When detectives attempted to interview Ron, he immediately refused to cooperate and left the interview room. A subsequent court-approved cell tower data dump provided intriguing information about both suspects' activities on the night of Kyle's murder. The data showed that Mike and Ron were in the area when the shooting occurred, though the technology couldn't pinpoint exact locations. Since both men lived near the same cell tower that serviced the bowling alley, they could have been at their respective homes rather than at the crime scene. More compelling was the pattern of phone activity immediately following Kyle's shooting. Both Mike and Ron made numerous calls, including several that appeared suspicious to investigators. Ron's calls to the hospital emergency room seemed particularly noteworthy, as they could have been attempts to determine Kyle's condition or establish an alibi. In 2018, investigators received what appeared to be breakthrough testimony from a woman identified by the pseudonym Amanda, who claimed to have witnessed the shooting. Amanda stated that she had been with Mike and Ron when they pulled into the bowling alley parking lot. According to her account, both men exited the vehicle, which she interpreted as preparation for a robbery rather than a simple drug transaction. She claimed to have witnessed the shooting before Mike and Ron returned to the car and fled. However, Amanda's extensive criminal history, particularly involving fraud and deception, undermined her credibility as a witness. While her information provided investigative leads, prosecutors determined her testimony alone would be insufficient for trial. Investigators continued pursuing various leads, including attempts to have Mike's family members record conversations with him. But these efforts proved unsuccessful, possibly because Mike had become suspicious of relatives who had previously contacted police. The case remains active but unsolved, with Kyle's family continuing to seek answers about why he was in that parking lot and who killed him. Despite numerous theories, potential suspects, and investigative efforts spanning more than a decade, the fundamental questions surrounding Kyle Seidel's death persist. The mystery of what brought a devoted father to that dimly lit bowling alley parking lot on a bitter December night continues to haunt investigators and his loved ones, serving as a stark reminder that some crimes resist even the most determined will. Efforts to uncover the truth. Kyle's story remains unfinished, waiting for the breakthrough that might finally provide justice for a life cut short just days before Christmas, and closure for those who still mourn his senseless loss.